So this is a YouTube thing. Okay. Yeah. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the live session of Culturally Responsive Built Environments course. So I thank you each and every participant for participating in my course and making it as a very fruitful course, and also for all your assignments you are submitting. They are very much informative. So we have almost finished our 8 weeks of the course, covering 8 modules, and you are almost ready for giving an examination on October 7th. In fact, we also realized certain hiccups during the course, especially I apologize for any kind of communication gap within the assignment 3 and 4. Obviously, it was the first time I'm trying to work out in an objective way of it. So there was also some technical reasons behind it, as well as some, the printing of that email and things like that. So we apologize for that. So obviously we have extended some dates to submit that. And but it was interesting to see all your work, the samples of the almost not only from India, from abroad also. All of you have sent your samples. That is actually adding up to a very good literature base. So I got more meat to study now rather than delivering. And I hope you have learned something. And this particular course has been developed as a very holistic journey of my own journey, how I've been working in different cultures and different kind of projects, and that is how um, it is basically a compilation of my own understanding of culturally responsible environments. And it took me about 15 to 16 years to have this kind of data and this kind of readings. So it is not just made for as a course for a course. It is made as also building an identity of what I am working on, what scales I am working on. So uh, thank you, Vidit Taneja. Uh, I hope you enjoyed the course. So do you have any queries that I could be helping you? Good morning, Gaurav Poswal. So, so do you have any kind of queries? You please do not hesitate to ask me. Okay. I think I heard a similar thing, Ambedkar Park in Lucknow, from one of the student. Can you just elaborate? Uh, can you tell me more such political examples which can be helpful for my research? Within India, yes, there are many. I mean, the scale of these interpretations are also more. Like you can see, uh, whether it is from the political aspect of it or a religious aspect of it, like Ayodhya is one of the aspect where you can see how different political notions are framing these places. And also, if you find, the some of the important, as if you've been to Calcutta, uh, at least 10 years before, you can see the whole public infrastructure, the colors of public infrastructure, and how it has been changed now. So even the color, if you earlier it was all red and white in color, and now it has been more of an indigo blue and white. So that also indicates certain representations on that. And similarly, if you look in some of the recently formed cities like Amaravati and things like that. Obviously, there is also some historical connections. Also, there are issues within the power discourses, how they imagine Amaravati, how the historicity could be also thought. So there are ample number of course. I mean, places one can look at it. In fact, if you remember my Geji Park case study, so how even bringing back the old building in this generation has also had a different responses. And another example I can see you even from Andhra Pradesh, or it is very common in many of the states, especially the public figure statues, which comes in the negotiation of the national figures. Like for example, I mean. where there was some national identities which are where Gandhi Chowk or Nehru Chowk or something like that. Today they have been replaced by many different political, emerging political, personalities, and how the public places are dominant with, and the whole meaning have changed because of various programs within it. So there are some very good examples starting at a public place level, and even it goes back in a city level as well, and it could be goes back as you were saying about Ambedkar Park. Probably I'm not familiar with exactly the park details of it, but uh, you can elaborate more. Okay, 107 acres and consists of two major enfilades and four major buildings, which are monumental in scale. Yes. So, what is the political discourse that has been shuffling the whole meanings? Okay. Consume many statues of Dalit leaders and rows of marble elephants. Okay, okay, yeah. It was an attempt to establish the discourse of Dalit power and might. According to my research, it reflects the same qualities which Albert Speer used theory of ruin value. Okay, but how does you, what kind of methodological approach you have followed? And precisely, what is your question? What is your query on it? But I don't know how to. Can you help me out? So one way of looking at it is, first of all, can you just tell me, has this particular park has been produced different sets of meanings over a period of time? Have been modified or adjusted or so? Is it a city level park? Is it a city level park or is it a neighborhood park? I assume that it could be a city level park. So, okay. So, can you also tell me what is the exact point of investigation you're looking at? So, I mean, what you're actually searching. Yes, you want to use the space syntax, but why you want to use the space syntax for what? What inquiry? Okay. Okay, I've just seen some of the images of this particular park, and it was really amazing. I mean, I only heard about it, but I've not seen. I've never been to Lucknow, it was really amazing what it talks about. And one is if you're applying on a space syntax tools of it, yes, it is an appropriate method to identify how this connectivity patterns also establish different hierarchies. And my one suggestion is, if you're looking at this, I think if you can also relate with how it connects with the broader city network, at least the adjacent city network or certain image of that particular city. So one is the connectivity aspect of it. The other is what you can do is how the social perceptions fits within it. So there is two sets of data. One is the space syntax part of it, and the other you can actually see how it symbolizes and how it influences the perceptions of the people, the communities over there. And if you can actually able to map this both the things, that will give you a better understanding of the social understanding of the space, and as a physical understanding of the space, and how they correlate. That is one thing. And if you want to do a similar examples, I am not sure whether I can give you exactly similar of Dalit orientation, but you can refer to certain public parks, especially the public gardens in Hyderabad, okay, which has been converted from the royal gardens into the public gardens. If you look at that kind of transitions, which are obviously next to the earlier parliament building, earlier assembly building. So in that way, that is one example which is coming in top of my mind, which has a, portrayed with a particular political significance, and now it has been for a public purpose, you know so that kind of transition would also help you. That's what I feel. And if you're also looking from a kind of fascist architecture, uh, I'm just thinking what else could actually, there might be probably places in Trivandrum where there are certain public parks, uh, because that is also placed from a kind of communist ideologies as well. I can't remember the names of that, but I remember some of my students have done some work on it. So that is one which is reflecting from my mind. And the other thing is, if you can look at these kind of the political dimension and how they have been translated in a public domain, I think that is one thing you can see, that how the historic notions of power and how its requalification for the public use, a democratic landscape, will be interesting to learn. Or any kind of even, I'm just thinking, actually, it's not coming on my top of my mind. I would just request you, can you actually drop an email to me? Okay. I'll just put my email to you. Let me think. Instead of hurrying up and giving you some, uh, something not relevant, better let me do also some homework. Let me also think about it, and then refer you with an ideal examples. So you can email it, just your query on it. I will definitely, if you are able to have a small brief or some update on your research work, if you can send it to me as a brief, so at least it will give me some more idea, and it will give me some more time to let me think about it. Okay, rather than giving you right now, this is, you can do this, you can do this. Let me do some homework for it, because when you said Dalit, that is a very strong composition. One is, it is bringing distinction in it. So it is representing uh, one particular class of the society, but it is a public place. So I think there are two oppositions. One is by character of it, and another one is the notion it is functioned. So if I want to give you a reference to a similar examples, I need a little more time to look into it. Okay. Thank you, Vidit. So may I know, is this a postgraduate research, or is it a undergrad research or a PhD research? Okay, undergrad dissertation. Okay, right. So you are about to go to do your thesis then. Mhm. I mean, if you are talking only in India, is it for your case study you're asking, or you are looking for a secondary case studies? Then I already discussed about a park of Geji Park. That is also now politically contested in Turkey, in Istanbul. So just a small suggestion, you can just think about it. If you're looking at this kind of fascist architectural political discourse, uh, I can refer, which is for a site, you can look at the happening Amaravati case, Amaravati city, where there is a central green park area, which is actually coming from the on the other side of the political offices. Like you have the assembly building, you have the CMs and the governor's palace, and then it is coming down to the judicial aspect and as well as to the public domain. So, in fact, there is a lot of scope if you want to do any particular park along with this kind of political understanding, especially bringing the democracy into the picture. Then I think Amaravati case would be a very interesting case, which has not is not for your case study, but maybe for a future intervention. That is one thing you can think of. You can just look at it. It is available in APCRDA websites. The central green corridor, the park part of it. Okay, that should be helpful for if you're looking at a thesis point of it. And then I am sure if you're looking from again a democratic aspect of it, then Chandigarh also will be one place which you can look at. Okay, thank you, Vidit. Uh, so drop me an email. I'll also give a better answer for it. Yes, I've already mentioned in the Ask a Question, there will be three sections. If you go through your Ask a Question, already some people have asked, and we have already kept that in the Ask a Question. There are three sections actually, which are based on your course and your assignments and the concepts which we have discussed during the course. There will be three sessions to it. If you just look into Ask a Question, we have already updated that. And it will be a little subjective. So please follow all my lectures. Once again, I would suggest you just review all the lectures one time. I think that should be sufficient for you to prepare well for your examination and assignments, what you have done. I mean, that should be good enough support for that. Because I really want to see how people have understood the course. Hi, Janeb. See, this course is not just dealing with just alone a hill architecture, but this course does covers a variety of contents of the related to culture. It could be hill, it could be desert, it could be a plain land, it could be a coastal aspect of it. So it covers a variety of aspects into it. So if you are working on a hill architecture, definitely, but it gives you a fundamental aspects of what are the determinants of the culture and how it informs the spatial aspect into it. So this is just the, this particular cultural dimension could be related to, if you're talking about Uttarakhand or Himalayan architecture. I think part of our lectures also talks about in Uttarakhand, how the buildings have been abandoned and all these things. So we talk more on the cultural perspective of it and how it is influenced and how it has been responsive in a different geographic context. Has it helped you? And if you want to learn more about anything on hill architecture, especially it depends on which part of the hill Himalayan architecture you're talking about. For example, if you're looking at Uttarakhand, there are a lot of resources on Koti Banal architecture. There are resources on Harsil. Okay, and even our own IIT Roorkee have also done some work on hill architecture. Okay, especially in the Kumam region as well, and right now, I mean, we are also doing some part of studies right now. So if anything you want to know about this, definitely you are most welcome to interact with us. And some of them are already available in online. You can refer Ashwin Kumar's work from our own institute who have worked on hill architecture. It's there in sciencedirect.com as well. You can find, just type on Uttarakhand and Ashwin Kumar, you'll obviously get that. And Koti Banal, they have done a lot of work. The earthquake and earth sciences people, I think they have done some work on it. And otherwise, you can also look at this architecture as research site too, which has a branch undergrad we find. So Janab, uh, can you also let us know, what aspect of it is difficult? Because being a technical institution as a research orientation, I try to cover which also not only for focusing on undergrad, it also should focus on postgrad and researchers also. Like the students who are participants, there are many of them are PhD research scholars, some of them are undergrad, some of them postgrad. So it covers almost everyone, right? Um, and uh, I mean, I see that there will be some points which will be difficult for undergrad, And sometimes for PhD or postgrad, there might be something which will be very basic, like for example, some materials which I'm talking about. So that might be basic for some of them. So what I'm trying to do is cover a wider audience of it, so that the course would be useful for a wider audience. Uh, Thank you, Kritika Chilera. So yes, architectural conservation, I completely dedicated a module on this particular subject, because if you are talking about architectural conservation, it talks about history, it talks about culture, and if you are talking about the both tangible traditions of it, it basically talks about the traditions, right? And both the tangible and intangible traditions are directly very much related to the culturally responsible environments. So here, what I try to differentiate in the whole course is I somehow related only one module of the architectural conservation, which has covered both the natural parts of the heritage as well as the intangible parts of the heritage and the built heritage aspects of it. But in the other modules, what I also brought is the challenges for the conservation. For example, in Kiruna caves, how the conservation challenges are there in moving and how they come in intercourse with the development, especially when we're moving a city, and what happens to a historic church. So I tried to bring the other side of development and what conservation architects have something to do in reality with the development. So that is how even when I was talking about uh, the terminology of culturally responsible environment, that is where how it responds to the context and the development context as well. So, in fact, my own profile, in many at times, though I am coming from vernacular architecture background and working in a disaster sector and covering parts of planning issues and as well as the conservation issues, many people did misunderstand me. That some people they thought I'm a conservation expert, some people they thought planning expert, some people, I thought a vernacular expert. But the thing is, my way of understanding, even when I used to teach conservation, I always bring development in parallel because there's a development pressure on the conservation. Okay, so just conserving back is one way of looking at it, but conserving, it's like you're talking about build back better aspect, but in the development setting, that is much more challenging. I hope it helps you, and thank you very much. So not only one more thing I want to tell you, when you talk about conservation, somehow in India, I have seen many of the conservation students, they always narrow down to a building material or building aspect of it. But I given you some examples of Pitalkhora, which goes back to the larger landscape of it. And given you a city level understanding of Kiruna, that is more of a planning issues, you know, and that is something about intangible heritage that talks about much more on a social fabric of it. So in that way, try to bring a very wide scales of conservation aspects, that whether it is a small building, but it has an influence from a larger perspective. So I really like the last part of it. You said you have realized that all of it is related to some way or the other. I'll tell you a small thing. We have different professions, whether you call architecture, you call landscape, you call planning, you call anything. So each one of them, they have their own expertise, but they look beautiful when they are actually work together in a context. Uh, Hemant, is it cultural conservation is also related to material? You mean the building material? You're talking about material? See, when you talk about, let's say an example, you might have seen recently I was in Undavalli caves for a study purpose. And I could see some of the repair restoration work has been done with a normal cement concrete. So using the cement concrete in the old historic caves, obviously, have changed a certain impression of that particular image. So sometimes, like if you are talking about any regeneration project, yes, it could be a regeneration project, it could be a conservation project, right? Uh, it has both a micro level implications and a meso level implications and a macro level implications. When we talk about micro level implications, yes, material also comes in part of it. Like in London, when I was living in London, you see even the roads, some of the high streets are paved with the stone pavements because of the historic nature. So there the material aspect works. The stone pavements. In Dartmoor, you have the slate, the slate roofing techniques. So that is where the historical significance is coming through the material aspects of it. So it is also relevant. It is not something only on the superficial part of it, but even a small material can make a big change out of it. I mean, can express something bigger. Has it helped you? Uh, Yeah, question paper format, Hemant, I've already given a hint of the three sections in the Ask a Question. So basically, it covers from the course itself, from your assignments, from the course, and the concepts discussed in the course. Okay, so I've already updated in the Ask a Question. All of you, please refer to Ask a Question. My TA has already updated that. And regarding the question which Krutika Chilera has talking about the masters thing, I think there are a couple of places. I'm not saying one. I mean, one country like normally University of York is a good place to do, and in fact, if you are looking on a temple architecture, obviously Adam Hadley's Institute, where he's working in Cardiff. I mean, depends on what focus you're going. Are you looking from a landscape perspective? Obviously, some different schools are there. I think that will be very much, even certain museum studies are there. And if you're looking from an archaeological perspective, so it depends on what focus you want to go. Okay, Italy is also a good place to study on, right? And UK University of side and Victoria Museum, they also run some kind of courses. So there are a couple of places, of course, in both in US they have, but depends on what focus you want to go into it. Okay, and there is completely a conservation studies in Gothenburg Institute in Sweden. That is also a good place to go at. And let me explain one by one. Lecture Sher Ali 39, where the definition of pluralism was given as a form of society in which members of minority groups maintain their independent cultural traditions. in context with the example given of Flankroyd and students and Louis Kahn with his team. So basically, when we talk about, I mean, Sherali, when I was referring that pluralism in the education and architectural education, so I was just giving a very basic definition of what pluralism is meant by, right? And then here, actually, when we talk about an independent, how people manage their independent cultural traditions, and that actually frames the context, right? And the moment we are talking about the Flankroyd, right, and the Louis Kahn, basically, I was trying to bring a thread of, uh, you know, how important is the cultural traditions, when we are designing in a context, how the cultural context is very important. Whereas this Frank Lloyd Wright example and Louis Kahn is talking about how the education system, has been transforming. And then I actually brought to one of my ongoing students' work actually of how with the digital tools, So basically, this Flankroyd and Louis Kahn has I brought it as a kind of how this transformation has started happening into it from a person sitting under a tree and how who never realizes he was a guru and he was a teacher, he was a student. So with that kind of philosophical approach, and I actually thought to brought in today's digital technologies, many of the CAD tools, how we are unable to address the cultural context in the design process. So that is where our ongoing research I try to elaborate on that. I mean, I cannot say these are too connected, but at least to give you a brief of how the education have changed from how the school of thoughts have started emerging in that, and today where we are. So that is what I brought the discussion over there. And I hope this helps. Then, which master's degree in architecture in India includes research-based approach? I cannot tell you a very right answer, but in IIT we have a system that even from bachelors they can come with who is having a higher CGPA, they have a directly admission into a PhD course, which is a kind of integrated model. That is one thing which I can think of. But as a master of research, I'm not sure within India, which some have or not. And AMI, which for cultural studies and architecture, where can we go for besides Paul Oliver? Who else is working? Oh, there are many. Okay, it depends on which aspect of cultural studies which you are looking at. There are many institutions. If you can actually let us know which aspect of cultural studies which you are looking at. Are you going from the conservation part of it? Can you go in urban regeneration? Can you go in even just only on a cultural studies? Or from an urban design perspective, there are many institutes. You just define your focus, and then I can help you on that, whatever I know. And Krutika Chilara, since political influence plays a huge role in outcome of a project, do you think there should be a separate session in colleges to teach grad students how to deal and go about a particular situation? Uh, I think one particular thing is communication for development. How you engage the stakeholders, how you interpret it, and how you convince and how you interface between various stakeholders. That could be one thing which could be part of your mass communication aspect as well. And basically communication for development, communication challenges for development. I think that could be, rather we call it as a subject. Why not it could be a design oriented subject which you do with, rather than a singular vision, why don't we do a shared vision of it? You know, so if you can train them on how you can collect the aspirations, how you can engage the governments, the governances into it, and that is could be a civic design project itself. In fact, in IIT Roorkee, we also do with some of the ongoing live projects and engaging the people and public. In my previous workplace, also we did conduct it in my previous, including SP Bhopal as well as Luleå University of Technology in Sweden, where my students have presented in the municipalities about their work. And that is where the real citizens and real governments participated in the process. In that way, it is a real learning process. I mean, I feel it need not be a separate subject, but it could be a part of the ongoing subject would be better, because every aspect is now building a separate subject that is loading the students like anything. So why not you tailor it a particular live studio project of that? Thank you. And for ME, I also have to extend, like, you can even refer from University of California and Berkeley, Nazar Al-Sayed's group, so completely working on cultural studies. And in India also, yes, there are many universities which focus on the cultural studies. Like in Germany, if someone is focusing on Tibetan, then there's also some institutions focusing only on the Tibetan cultures. So like that, there's a variety of, depends on your focus of inquiry. So are there any more questions? Uh, I think transcript, obviously it is a pure you know transcription of what I was delivering. Rather than that, if you can actually, I mean, that could help to some extent, but it could be if you actually listen to the lectures and note down, the gist of what I was talking about. I think that should be sufficient for an examination point of it. And any kind of, I think some of the articles I've already gave links in the lecture itself. So whatever the articles are referred, I have given links. So if you want, you can learn more about it. But ideally, I have given mostly what I have discussed from the course point of it, the concepts which I have discussed, from the assignments which I have briefed you out. So in that way, uh, so I'm looking at two things. One is the I'm looking from the assessment point of it rather than the evaluation point of it, right? Assessment means how it can help you to learn more. Evaluation is, I'm not just simply grading it yes or no. How much a student is putting their honest effort, how. So that is why, though it is a little risky, rather than going for a multiple choice questions, I'm going for a little subjective part of it. It actually consumes a lot of time from my side. Otherwise, many of the other people, they normally give for a multiple choice, which could end up less burden for us. But I really wanted even assignments to be subjective, because students, even let's say if 1,000 people have participated, maybe even within that, even if 1,000 are not fulfilling, 200, 300 people, if they are giving a serious attempt into it, that gives me a very rich satisfaction, because that is a honest learning which comes out of it, and I also get a very good informative feedback from you. So in that way, I look from assessment point of it rather than an evaluation point of it. Yes, I will be delivering. I will be delivering. Uh, I'm planning to deliver some course in future. So first of all, when I corrected your assignments, I was very much satisfied. At least I'm getting a very good meet from across the continent, a variety of examples, which I need to, first of all, you might have submitted a piece of paper of a piece of a small 150 words, but what I will do is normally I go through each and every detail again and again. I learn more about it. And so I am planning to develop this particular course. So right now I'm working on the modalities of it, how to develop it. One is this particular course is a very first time I'm developing, which is I compiled all my journey into one big 40 slot lecture, and which has 8 modules. The next modules I'm thinking is I'm focusing on each module and then developing a particular course on it. But they will be smaller courses, not the 40 slots. So probably, for example, a power, here I only covered 5. So the next courses, I'll be developing only on, let's say, on power will be completely one course. Culture and risk will be completely one course. Conservation will be completely one course. So they are shorter courses. So this particular course have provided a broader umbrella for it, providing all the dimensions of it. But the next courses will be the in-depth courses covering only the task of it. So that is what I am planning for. So right now, after this course, let's see the feedback from all, because I follow each and every feedback. And I also need to improve certain vocal skills, because talking in a classroom and talking in an online session will be very different. And I've learned a bit. I think you also might observe from my lecture 1 and lecture 40, there will be some confidence and some improvement is going on. So I'm improving on those skills as well, my personality skills, my delivery skills, my vocabulary skills, and my content skills as well. So it is very different from a classroom to an online. So I'm working on that modules now. So I will be taking probably another 2-3 months buffer to prepare myself for the next course, because this particular things needs a lot of preparation. It is not something which we prepare on the spot and we deliver. It needs a lot of reading. It needs a lot of preparation. And even to refine these things, it needs a thorough mock-up part of it. And I really appreciate to get more audience. So basically, with this course, I'm trying to develop a team, that's a network of it. All your assignments show me some good examples. Regarding architectural conservation, yes, I teach architectural conservation in here, both for masters and as well as undergrad. In fact, next semester I'll be teaching. And if anyone is interested, you can always participate. Yeah, question paper format, I've already mentioned in an Ask a Question. There will be 3 sessions. There will be 3 sections. The first question section will talk mostly on the lectures which I covered, and the second will be covered something on the assignments covered. The third will be covered on the concepts that has been covered in your understanding of the concepts that have covered throughout the course. I think you just my basic thing I would like to say is before going to examination, just listen all the lectures in 1-2 days. I think that should help you a bit on that. You don't need to feel tense about the examination. I made it a much more simpler version of it. I want to see what you have understood about the course. Okay, there's a very first time of its course, culturally responsive built environments. You might not, even if you Google it, you'll not get this kind of term. So this is a compilation of various scales, various experiences in a global thing. I want to see how people have understood from various disciplines coming forward and various age groups. So definitely, it is a subjective understanding. It is not like a mathematics or a physics a plus b is equal to c. Some people have understood in a plus b is equal to d or a plus b is equal to c, but I want to see the subjectivity of it. That's how it provides a learning from. It's not that people writing some unrelated answers. At least if you relate it with what you have learned, that would be really helpful for us. Yes, we do have certain. In fact, if you're talking about protecting of cultural heritage or anything like that, yes, we do have certain. ASI also follows certain regulations. We have some buffer zones. We have even if you look at the Delhi, uh, the National Commission of Arts. They have certain. As an architect, one has to address these particular acts, definitely. So as I said, ये जा रहा है क्या this one? नहीं जा रहा. नहीं जा रहा है ना. इसको मैंने कुछ मैसेज भेजा था. ये स्ट्रक हो गए. Hemant, actually, if you look at Delhi Urban Art Commission guidelines, um, obviously they also have. So what we are talking about is, if you look at the ASI, which has going with a different set of guidelines, especially on the heritage precincts. You have the heritage properties and then the heritage buildings and the heritage precincts. And how do you think, without any regulation, they are all framed? You go for any kind of heritage precincts, don't you think certain buffer zones have been identified? They do exist, even if Delhi Urban Art Commission guidelines. I mean, if you're designing any particular, yeah, but they have some. They had also defined certain buffers, even if they are talking about archaeology, but they also define certain buffers. Sure. See, buffer straw, if you talk about the pressings, and also it will have a development control regulations also. If you have any heritage pressings, so don't you think the heights will be restricted because of its vistas, because of its the program it is assigned? If you take Bhojpur, don't you think it will have a control on its pressings and its neighborhood context? Yeah. But don't you think that is a part of these regulatory processes? But only thing, one thing I can say is they're not. There are certain things which are developing in our country, like unlike in the Western country, like UK or any other place, they are more precisely focusing even at the material typology, material palettes. If you talk about Finland, they talk even of the material palettes of their facade also. So those kind of things, a long way to go from here. So on a similar note, if you look at from Indian context of it, I don't know whether we should imitate the Western part of it, or because, for example, if you go to Amritsar, the Him Sahib, the whole facade control has been worked out. But how does it work in an Indian context? How it responsive in Indian context is a questionable thing. So I think I hope it helped all of you in the live session. As I said to you, this is not just a course. Okay, this course is not just a course. It brings us together with a relation. We are learning from each other. All, it's not only what you learn from you. I'm also learning from you. That is why the whole assignment process is working on your queries. Many of you have pointed out. Um, Many of your queries have really given us an important knowledge, you know, for us to think, to think back about it. And definitely, we are trying to improve that, right? So, apart from this course, you can always feel free to contact me anytime. Any kind of queries you have, I'm always happy to help you on that. And finally, the last queries, the assignment 7. Yes, I have to evaluate. I'll be evaluating. I'm in the process of it, because we are actually compiling the things and then evaluating. right? So it is also taking some time, because for a technical part of it, we cannot put both the things in one time. So for that's why we have split it into two assignments, and then now we have to compiling the things, and then we have another. That's what we did for fourth and fifth also, the third and fourth as well. Right. And see, community participation, if you talk about Ahmedabad, um, maybe I can say maybe, but it depends on how the data has been processed, right? And if you we have to look at a long-term adaptation part of it. On that note, even community participation is not something new. It is there, and depends on what aspect and how the local governments are involved in it, how they are engaging the stakeholders into it. There is also the business sector into it. There is also the community sector into it. Okay, thank you very much for all of you for participating in this. And I think here we end the session. And if there is any queries, you always can email me, right? You can email my official email ID as well. I'm just dropping my official email ID. And I also put my personal email ID, whether I'm here in IIT or somewhere else. Obviously, that is always there. But this is my official email ID. You can always contact me on this, right? Thank you very much. So we end this session.